A great question. So let's talk about it. Narcissistic fathers. What is the difference between a narcissistic father and a narcissistic mother? And what can the children, especially only children, of a narcissistic father? For those who don't know, hi, hello, my name is EB. I'm an NLPMP coach who helps survivors of narcissistic abuse and trauma recover. And I'm also a survivor of 2 decades of narcissistic abuse myself. While I didn't have a narcissistic father, I've worked with a lot of people who have had narcissistic fathers, and here are the biggest differences and the most significant things that I've noticed in those relationships. Number one, it's that the biggest difference between a narcissistic mother and a narcissistic father is the way in which those traits are expressed. You see, like everyone else on the planet, narcissists are beholden to gender stereotypes, gender standards, and gender norms, which means that most narcissistic fathers, men, express their narcissistic traits overtly, okay? It's more socially accepted for narcissistic males to express their narcissistic tendencies through threats, violence, intimidation, harassment, stalking, things like that. There is also an additional level of entitlement that you will find with narcissistic fathers because, again, a lot of gender standards, gender norms give a lot of entitlement to men. And when they become fathers, they're allowed to express that entitlement even more. So you find fathers who have expectations that they express as demands. You will do this, you will be this, or you will suffer whatever I decide you deserve suffering. There are high levels of possession and ownership at play too, right? So you see the narcissistic father saying, I pay for you, I own you, you will do this, I don't care how it affects you because that's what I want, or you can get out, or you can be harmed, or you can be, whatever it is. Now, with their children, narcissistic fathers still triangulate, right? There's still that enmeshment. There is still that pseudo-mutuality. They demand that everyone fall in line to their views of the world and believe the way that they believe. But there is some subtle differences that I have noticed between the way narcissistic fathers treat their sons and the way narcissistic fathers treat their daughters. Now, while a narcissistic mother sees her daughter as a threat, the narcissistic father tends, more often than not, to see their son as a mirror. Instead of competing with that son, they see that son as a physical, living representation of all their fears, all their failures, and all their insecurities. They project all of those things onto that son and then target him, punish him, take out their anger and their disappointment and all of those things on the son. So that's why you can see a lot of super contemptuous and resentful relationships between narcissistic fathers and their sons. Now, again, not always. If the narcissistic father has a son that will play ball, that will do whatever it is he wants, act however it is he thinks that son should act, then that son can still get that place of golden child and get a lot of leeway, get a lot of excuses made for them. Now, what about a narcissistic father and their daughter? This is when things get really hairy for me anyway. There is, more often than not, a pattern of domination and control between a narcissistic father and his daughter. I have seen a lot of narcissistic fathers who essentially see their daughter as an item, as an object, which we'll get into deeper, but they basically spend their role as father crafting the ideal female, highly controlling their daughters to try to turn them into some version of a female that makes up for all the women that have disappointed them or resented the narcissistic father in their lives. Think Stepford Wives. With their daughters, there is a lot of parentification that tends to go on between these narcissistic fathers and their daughters as well, meaning that the daughters are made to do a lot of emotional labor for the father. The father depends on the daughter to soothe him, makes that daughter feel and act responsible for him and the way he feels in any given moment. I have seen patterns of objectification as well. Objectification, not necessarily in a overtly sexual way, but these narcissistic fathers who control every facet of their daughter's body, how she dresses, how she does her hair, how she does makeup. She's not allowed to express herself physically in any way save for that which he deems appropriate. Again, teaching her low self-worth, teaching her not to love her body unless it is his idea of love, etc., etc. Being the only child of a narcissistic father is going to have some similarities to being the only child of a narcissistic mother, right? You're still going to get a chance to play all the roles, especially if you're someone who's breaking cycles, who's doing things differently, who's going to go against the grain and do what's right for you versus what the narcissist wants from you. But there will be differences whether you are a son or a daughter, what roles you play, when you play them, and how you play them for the narcissistic father. What do you think? Have you seen these patterns in your own narcissistic parents, your narcissistic fathers, your narcissistic brothers? Let me know in the comments and make sure that you follow for more.